So what do cell phones and tablets have in common at Larp? Well, for one, they always seem to be nearby. Whether you're pulling it out to quickly check the rules or snap a quick photo, somebody's always got one out. The other thing they have in common is they ruin immersion. I hate ruining immersion. So unless you're playing a very, happening in now time game, if it's post-apocalyptic or fantasy, you're basically shattering the illusion right there. I think I've got a way around it so that I'd be able to use my tablet at Larp to do all those wonderful things and still keep it in game. When I decided to make a tablet case that I could use in-game that would really fit the environment of our game, first thing I do, go to YouTube, start doing some research on what other people have done and what ways it can be done. And there are literally hundreds of videos on how to do this. So I'm not doing anything new. I'm simply taking it and applying it specifically to Larp. You'll need a book that's going to be big enough to fit your iPad or whichever device you want to hide. You'll need some glue and some decorative products, that kind of thing. You'll also need a razor blade sharp enough to cut through the pages. There's lots of tutorials out there. I'm just going to go step by step and see how it goes. Okay, so the first thing you want to do is you want to figure out how deep in the book you want your case to be. Now, I measured out my tablet and it's just under 1 centimeter deep. So once I put the thin layer of felt on there, I figure 1 centimeter probably should be good. So you want to measure in your book 1 centimeter worth of pages. There we go. And mark that page off. Now these ones here, we're going to glue down all nice and solid with the Mod Podge. That's going to make this part all nice and solid, so when I carve out the square for my tablet, it'll just set right down in there and it'll be perfectly flush with the top page. Basically, you just take your Mod Podge or your glue. If you're using plain white glue or wood glue, you want to make sure you water it down a little bit so it goes on a little bit more thin and still gives you good coverage. Wood glue is a little bit thick to paint on with a brush. A little bit of water for most glues works fantastic. We're just going to lay that down. Now you want to paint your edges nice and thick, making sure it soaks into the paper. I'm going to take some wax paper or parchment paper and just put it in between those pages so you're not gluing your book shut. And there you go. Close it up, put something nice and heavy on it to hold it nice and square, and let it dry. Okay, so my glue is hardened up and it did stick to the table a little bit. Fortunately, this is my workshop table and things stick to it all the time. So now what I need to do is I'm going to measure out and trace my tablet to make sure I get in the right spot. Now I'm going to leave some finger notches in there so I can actually get at the buttons on the side, and I'm considering actually putting a port through the side as well so I'll be able to plug it in while it's still inside the book. So give myself enough space. I want to get a little bit closer to the inside edge. All right. Where my metal ruler is, so basically I'm going to cut out the pages and carve them out all the way to the base of the book from the back side. And you just keep carving down until you get to the back of the book. So as I was hollowing out the compartment for my tablet, I think my blade probably could have been a little bit sharper. Not a big deal. So I'm going to use my Dremel tool and just clean up around these corners a little bit and get that all perfect before I glue it back together. Now, What we also have to do is we glue around the inside edge, and that's going to seal these pages so they're not going to separate and tear. The other thing I learned is I should have made the template a little bit larger to allow for a little bit more space. I had originally intended to put some felt in there just to give it some padding and a nicer, cleaner look, but I'm finding the tablet fits perfect in there. So I left this clamped overnight with wood clamps. And I had always put a piece of wax paper in between what you want glued and what you don't want glued. That allows a little bit of a seal so it doesn't stick all together. When I did the carving on this, you can see I put a small notch in there. That's for the controls on the side of my tablet, so I'll still be able to turn the volume up and down, unlock it, that sort of thing. What I'm going to do next is I've made a template of my tablet on the back, indicating where the holes are for the microphone and the camera. So that fits perfectly right over there, and I'm going to place this in here and drill out these holes so I'll still be able to use the camera while it's in the case. I've marked it on the inside where the two holes need to be based on where my camera and my microphone go. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take just an electric drill on a fairly full speed, so I'm nice and fast. If it goes too slow, it tends to tear. Anytime you're drilling on a table, make sure you're putting a piece of wood underneath it, therefore you're not drilling right into your table. Just take your time with this. You don't want to, it's harder to fix a mistake than it is to do it correctly. There we go. Now I picked up a little lens that I'm going to put on the outside when I do my final decoration. It's basically just a clear lens, kind of a steampunk looking thing, and some other decorations which we'll put on fairly soon. So as long as I stay inside the diameter of that circle, I should be okay for my camera. So I'm just going to clean this up a bit, get rid of the fuzzies, and then I'll place my pad in there to make sure I'm lined up. And camera. Perfect. I can now see perfectly through my book. And if I look on the back side, it lines up just right. So that works out fantastic. Awesome! Woohoo! Love it when a project comes together. So now I need to use a smaller drill bit and punch that smaller hole in there. Just want to make sure it's nice and round. There we go. Now I'm going to drill a couple more holes in this. Medieval books, when they bound them together, would often use a 4-hole design. So they would have 2 holes, top and bottom, and then they would lace the spine together to keep the pages from tearing out of the book. So I'm going to imitate that, and I'm going to do that by drilling a couple holes in here to make sure I can get some lace through to tie off. So as I was working on cleaning this all up and getting it ready for the next phase, I realized I still had a whole bunch of space in the front of the book. And I decided to jump ahead and make a couple extra compartments for item cards, in-game money, and a pen, just so I can fill things out. So I left a few pages that I can still flip and turn, and then I made a front compartment in the book for those things. Cut them all out. Now we got to Mod Podge the inside of the chambers and let that dry up, and then we can get on with covering the rest of the book. Okay, so everything's all glued up the way I wanted it to. It's had some time to dry, and now we're going to decorate the outside of the book. But before I put any of my fine details on there, my little brass pieces, that kind of thing, I want to texture the outside of the book. So I'm going to use an idea that I learned from Max Sterling on Larpgasm, and the way he textures books. I'm going to take some regular tissue paper that you would use for packing presents at Christmas, that kind of stuff. Just tears up really nice and easy. And we're going to coat the outside of the book with Mod Podge. So let's get started on this. Once I have it coated in texture with the paper, then I will be painting that to give it a more leathery look. Alright, so jumping a little ahead in time, I've now let that coat dry, and I'm going to just give it a second coat of the Mod Podge just to make sure everything's all nice and sealed and uniform in texture. Alright, so the back of the book is all dry now. I've got lots of texture on there. It's all sealed around the edges. And I'm going to start painting it. Now, I'm a bit of an experimental painter, generally, in that I don't have any classical or official training as an artist. But to me, it's about balancing colors and layers. So I'm going to throw some yellow on there first, which is going to give it the light undertones. Doesn't have to be perfect, because I want the book to kind of have a look like it's an old book, like it's been around for a long time. It's been weathered and beat up, passed between many users for generations. And the backstory I'm going to spin it with is this has the magical ability to capture moments. And it's also got enchantment spells in it that allow me to access volumes of knowledge in one single book. Kind of like the internet. Oh wait, it is the internet. So I'm just going to let that set for a bit until it's not quite tacky. Okay, so now my yellow's all dried up here. So I'm going to use a little bit of brown sugar paint. Not actual brown sugar, that would be bad. And a little bit of cinnamon brown. It's going to be a very sweet book. I'm just going to take a sea sponge painting sponge, and I'm going to start with the light, and we're just going to There we go. Now I'm going to take the cinnamon. I'm just going to go over it again, just to darken it up. Now I tend to go a little darker in the deeper crevices, so along this groove in here, I'm going to have a little bit more of the dark cinnamon, just to darken that up. That's where the dirt and the grime would have been sticking as the book aged, whereas on the more outer surfaces it would have got rubbed off and wiped clean a little bit more. Okay, so now I'm going to let this dry, and then I'm going to hit it with a dry brush highlights with a little bit of metallic copper. Great, so now that this is dry here, I want to do some dry brushing with a metallic copper paint, and I've got some adornments that I'm going to put on the book. And what I want to do is I want to just bring the copper paint to kind of accentuate where the adornments are going to go. So I'm just going to lay them out as they will be. This, of course, being the top of the book, and this being the bottom. I went to Michael's and picked up some very interesting little trinkets and baubles. They're going to look great on here. One of them that I picked up is a little locket. I want to protect the lens for my tablet. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to, it just opens up like this. And it's got a second lens in it. Now it's glass on both sides, so I'm going to pop the glass out of the back side and then just have it so when I glue it on and I open the latch, it can fall open like this. So while I'm videoing, it's open, but I've still got that glass lens to protect it. And then this is going to go right here. All of these adornments I'm just going to hot glue on. Now the copper paint, I'm just going to get a little bit on there. Don't need very much at all. I'm just going to lightly brush away from the adornments, just to give a little bit of highlight on these taller edges. I kind of have a somewhat of a vision of how I'd like it to look when it's all done, but I don't put too much emphasis on trying to force things to look like that. I kind of let them just become what they will be, kind of like the happy painter, happy little copper on there. So I'm going to let this paint dry, and then we'll glue on our little accent pieces and then start putting the straps and the leather bits on it. Okay, now that my paint is dry and I'm looking at it, I'm really happy with these colors. I want to hit it one more time just to seal the color in with the Mod Podge. Now the product I'm using is the Mod Podge paper. I'm sure there's many other varieties of Mod Podge. I've never used the product before, but yeah. All right, fantastic. Book's all dry now. It's got the gesso gives it a really nice semi-gloss kind of finish. The light shines off it a bit when you get the reflection right. Yeah, it's all dry. I love the copper look. I've got all my parts ready to go on it that I've chosen for the little adornments and whatnot. All of my hardware that I'm putting on is kind of an antiqued brass kind of look. I'm not sure how well you can see that on the camera, but I've got some book corners. I'm going to go like this. I'm pretty sure I'm satisfied with my final positioning on them. This here is the locket that I was talking about. It did have a little ring at the top, and it had glass on both sides. Just opened it up and popped the backside glass out. I want it to be able to hang open like this and not obscure the lens in the camera. So that's going to go here. I've got that to go right there. Yeah. So now I got my position ready. Everything's going to get just hot glued on, and yeah, these little corner tabs, you kind of these little corner tabs bend over the edge, around the edge of the book, and so I'll do that with pliers. I'll get them set on another book first to get the angles right, then I'll add the hot glue and then just slip them on. Then we'll do our lacing in the back of the binding and we'll be good to go. Excellent, so the glue is all hardened now, and yeah, I've got my holes pierced for my binding thread, and yeah, so it's just a matter of threading the leather around here through these holes. Okay. So now I always have difficulty with threading things through holes like this. It's not one of my strong suits, and I'm sure you probably know better ways than I do. But I'm just going to take this and put the point of this large needle against the leather, against the hole, and I'm just going to poke it through that way. And should go through nicely. Doesn't actually have to provide any structural strength, it's just for decoration. And last but not least, I want to feed one more piece of leather through there at this level. Doesn't have to be super tight, and you just wrap it around like this, and you can tie it off while you're in the field, and the book will stay closed for you. Remember to give it a thumbs up and subscribe, and looking forward to making a lot more videos for you. Alright, so here we are. We've got our book. It's coated, it's decorated, it's basically water resistant on the outside. Stays shut. I've got space for my cards and my tablet. Thank you guys for watching. I hope this helps you. I'd love to hear about projects that you're working on. If you're, take this idea and make cases. I hope it inspires you and enables you to make your game a little bit more immersive and realistic, and still be able to have, great photos from game and stuff. And yeah, so find me on Instagram. I'm also on Tumblr, and Wooden Knight Battle Games on Facebook. Yeah, send me pictures, show me what you're doing. I'd love to see it. Thanks.